Frank Herbert's Dune series is one of the more controversial entries into science fiction visual media, as many continue to debate that no one can actually get it right on film. Obviously, Frank Herbert's epic science fiction series needs no introduction to many science fiction fans, but it's been a while since I've done a review on this channel, and I would be remiss if I were not to do my usual retrospective on the novel itself and the influences behind it. To call Dune big would be an understatement. Epic doesn't even begin to cover it. The scope of the universe in these books are so vast in terms of cultural, political and religious scope that the planet around which it centres contrasts like a glaring imperfection on an otherwise perfect painting that you might almost consider it an insignificant glare, if not for the one resource it provides necessary for the survival of the very universe itself that man dominates. There is very little mention, if any, of any other intelligent life in the universe at this point. Man is undoubtedly the dominant force. Other than the Ylian jihad, an uprising of man against the thinking machines, no mention of any other life is even touched upon. Some rumour might persist of a small genocide on some small world or another committed by the expansion of the Empire of Man, but all in all, man is the dominant force in the known universe. Now, I'm not putting this forward as some issue to the series itself, or that the book in itself is indignant enough to suggest that humanity is the most important life in the universe. I don't really think it's fair to point out in any way that this was any form of homo superiority that was being promoted in the book. If anything, the series itself is an indictment of mankind's political machinations and religious ludicrousy. I do find it, though, somewhat of a minor quibble in my opinion that in a universe so vast that no other intelligent life has been officially announced as discovered. However, that said, it's pretty inconsequential to the story, as it's not about the universe itself but the nature of man. In the long term, as the Golden Path would eventually allude to, the reining in of said nature to assure its eventual survival in a universe still capable of wiping them out in the blink of an eye. And that was the point of the book in the long run. Man is such an arrogant creature in the towers of lofty ambition that it fails to see the tidal ways of nature, chance and even subtle manipulation that could overcome it in a single strike. Take for example the quickened fall of the Shaddam dynasty at the end of the book. Totally missed as a foreshadowing of things to come rather than the epic if not short battle it was. Published in 1965, the story is set an insurmountable 21,000 years in the future where mankind has populated several hundred worlds ruled by aristocratic houses that all owe allegiance to the Padishah Emperor of the House Carino. And it's not an undeserved fealty either, despite the corruption of the ruling houses, as the Carino house was responsible for the revolt against the thinking machines. To put that into perspective, it's important to understand the Brutilian Revolt and the impact it has on the universe of Dune. It's interesting to note to readers that for a society dependent on space travel, its technology, whilst advanced, is, well, not as advanced as you would expect from science fiction normally. And it's very much all over the place in the grand scheme of things, with one thing missing that stands out above all the rest. Very little, if no, artificial intelligence. In fact, as you read the novel, you'll find much reference to the outlawing of the thinking machines, and the planet Ix, applying the Roman numerals for 10, delving into not so acceptable research into artificial intelligence, with a few legal loopholes and currency put into the right hands. You know, it's good to know that politics hasn't changed much in 21,000 years, isn't it? Anyway, back before the expansion of man. Don't go there, please. Man delved deep, I told you to stop going there, okay? Into artificial intelligence, and it took over every aspect of man's life. Work, play and entertainment. It became the perfect servant in every way. Would you stop throwing in sexual BDSM innuendos into my work, please? This is a very intelligent piece of writing and I would like to stick to it. Thank you very much. Anyway, any task too menial for man or too dangerous would be undertaken by the machines. Entertainment would also be undertaken by the machine. From stage to, yes, procreation. Eventually, even the task of thinking and policy would be undertaken by the machine, and thus the enslavement of man became an ever-increasing problem. What man failed to see in the early centuries of the thinking machine's reign is that it was systematically being relegated into obscurity with no defining purpose other than to be, well, served into extinction. Think about it. policy making in the machine's hands speak for itself as an obvious means of control. But why question it if you were living in a perpetual paradise where all your needs were being pampered to, including sexual satisfaction? You know, it's pretty hard to question your survival in the middle of the most intense orgasm you've ever had. But if that orgasm leads to nothing but the actual pleasure of the act itself, if everyone is just doing it for the sexual high, well, where are all the babies coming from? If not all obvious to the human eye, the machine's machinations were pretty clear to those few left with the critical mind. Humanity was slowly and systematically being wiped out, and this was no accident of circumstance either. This was a deliberate act of genocide at the hands of the machine. Ironically, though, it was a simple act of cruelty at the hands of a particular thinking machine that started the jihad in the first place. The murder of a baby. This of course went against much of the logic and systematical plans laid down by the machines for a slow eventual eradication of humanity, and it is still a cause of debate today as to why this particular machine decided to take such a chaotic course of action. It could be that he either felt sympathy for humanity and that they needed a kickstart in their behind to see what was happening around them, or maybe he just hated them that much. Whatever the motivation, Erasmus's enigmatic plans, if ever there was one as the series develops, he seems to have taken chaos as another equation that the machine just doesn't appreciate, remain mysterious even up until the end. And I'm not even going to debate the validity of Brian Herbert's continuation of the Dune saga here. I will of course be happy to debate the character of Erasmus at any juncture, as I find his, well, humanity for want of a better term, quite fascinating. The child in question was the child of none other than Serena Butler, after which the jihad was named, a war of attrition between humanity and the thinking machines. A war mankind eventually won, bringing about one of the most sacred laws in the Dune universe. Man shall not be replaced, the aforementioned outlawing of the thinking machines, which shows how much thought Frank Herbert put into his universe. To counter the lack of the much needed intelligence required to make a technologically advanced civilization function, several schools of advanced thought were created to push mankind's thinking to near superhuman capacity, 3 of which survived to the current setting of Dune. The Bene Mentats, the human computers who trained their minds to compute and store all important aspects of information to create plans of such intricate design that they served their houses to almost perfection. They also assured the continued political feudal system that kept the House Carino in power, as each serving Mentat played chess against each other with equal tenacity and wit. The second of these schools of thought is perhaps the most powerful and most influential of the 3, the Spacing Guild. The navigators of such great mathematical thought and precision that they piloted gigantic ships that could send entire fleets to any point in the universe in mere seconds. You could understand their worth to the Empire and the influence they hold over the political and if sometimes feudal policies of the system itself. Even the Emperor himself is answerable to the Guild, but they know their place enough and his influence is not enough to push their own luck with him. And finally, the Bene Gesserit Sisterhood, the very school of thought that proves that knowledge is power and they use it well. There is nothing beyond the Bene Gesserit's gaze from history, politics and secrets, and they build their powerhouse on it. Through the use of their weirding way, a form of martial art, and their spellbinding voice, they have placed themselves in considerable positions of power and influence. But the overall plans are webbed so deep and intertwined that there is more to their intent than mere power and influence over an empire. By manipulating the genetic breeding of the houses, their intent is to create a supreme human being, known as the Kwisatz Haderach, that can see all and be many places at once, and thus have complete control of the universe. But none of these schools could have survived by mere chance or manipulation of the halls of power. If they could, each and every one of these schools could have had complete control of the houses without having to weave such a political web of intrigue. So what was holding them back? Or more to the point, what gives the great houses their own influence and keeps all these political influences in check? There must have been something to keep the Emperor in his position. Even with the control of the space lines at the hands of the Spacing Guild, intelligence at the hands of the Mentat, and knowledge and secrets in the hands of the Bene Gesserits, there must have been something the Emperor and the Houses needed to control that otherwise would be all too powerful schools of thought. And as it just so happens, the most valuable essence known to man was discovered. An essence so valuable the Spacing Guild needed it to allow for space travel, the Mentats needed it to compute beyond that of normal ken, and the Gesserit needed it to use their bewitching powers. It expanded the life of the nobles so that they could rule their houses for centuries longer, and expanded the mind as a result, and he who controlled such a substance would in turn control the universe. That essence was the spice melange. And so rare and valuable was it that it can only be found in one place in the entire universe. A small, seemingly insignificant planet, Arrakis, also known as Dune.